You know, in a free society, you have a lot of privacy. And if you're living in a constitutional government that supposedly protects privacy, people would be peaceful and nobody would be worrying about who's spying on us and what the government is doing. But today's a different world, especially as we go through this whole issue of privacy with the lockdowns and COVID and the vaccine passports. There's not much privacy there. Of course, the privacy had been attacked a long time before that, and I think one of the strongest motivations for the attack on privacy by government is making sure they collect all the revenue that they desire. And so they have to know what you're doing and what you're doing with your money. So today we want to concentrate more on something that's been around. We've talked about it before. It has existed throughout history. When governments mess up the money, you know, they're very, very stringent on correcting it by penalizing and punishing the people. So the one thing they do is penalize you if you disobey wage and price controls. But the other thing is they want you to be recording everything. And today, just about everything does get recorded. It goes through computers. It goes to the government. It goes to the IRS. And but the last vestige of protection against that is if you want to walk in a store and you want to buy something and you just like to have privacy. Nobody else needs to know what I'm buying. So you pull out a couple dollars bills, $100 bill, and you hand it, you know, to the clerk. And theoretically, you know, the bill is unmarked, where they don't know where it came from, and you had a private transaction. It was a voluntary transaction. But when push comes to shove, the effort is always, you know, to crack down. I remember the first time this came up, it was probably still in the 70s. Of course, the economies were pretty rocky in the 70s. And I had a debate with another physician. I don't know how this debate was set up. It was over the radio, on a radio program. And he was gun-ho for cracking down and having a cashless society. And his whole argument, I remember, was then we can collect enough of the enough taxes, you know, sales taxes, to run our government. And there's a lot of that, but there are other reasons too for cracking down, you know, on privacy. For instance, in medicine, a few years ago, once again, the government's involved in medicine, which we certainly have found out with COVID. The government's involved, they pay most of the bills, so they have to know what's going on, and yet the records became a problem because they were so public, and they still are, but they got worse. So Congress took it upon themselves. We'll settle this. We'll pass legislation that will guard against this, and it's called the HIPAA law. But from the very beginning, I was skeptical of that. I'm more convinced than ever. It does the opposite. It's one of those things that we used to talk about when I was in Congress. Look at the title first and believe that the opposite is being done. So if the HIPAA law is being passed for privacy, it means all the records are going to be sent to the government because they want to know what you're doing, and there's a lot of manipulation on that. And now that they're starting to ration some sensible drugs that could be used for COVID, believe me, there will be a lot of record keeping. So there's a lot of reasons why people would move toward a cashless society, and what I'm hoping for, but I hoped a couple years ago that we'd never have a lockdown, and look what happened. But right now, this is a serious problem. We should contend with it and be ready to resist it, but it doesn't look like the ducks have lined up that next week we're going to have this happen.
Can you imagine if all of your money was only digital and only on a government computer? Could you imagine how that would be constantly used against you? When I get to the supermarket, I'd like to get sweets, but you know, the government thinks I'm a little overweight, so my government digital wallet will not allow me to purchase sweets. And I can't really buy real meat today because, you know, the climate emergency, but I am allowed to get this fake lab-grown meat. So my digital government money will allow me to buy these things, and I guess those other things that I don't want, you know, I just have to live without it. That's part of being in this society.
You know, when the politicians get together and they want to put in a program that may be controversial. They have to think up a way of selling it to the public, and you sort of alluded to that. The people have to get around to accepting it. But how the government does it is with propaganda, so that if they want you to accept some type of a welfare state program that's bound to fail, they have to convince them that they're going to get a good deal, or get our kids to accept the idea that they can be drafted or sent off to fight a war that's totally unnecessary and very deadly, which we did in the Middle East and many other places for a good many years. And most of the time the programs benefit the rich over the poor. So the military-industrial complex benefits, from these perpetual wars. The patriotic citizens and supporters of the war, they lose out. But the whole thing is most of this type of activity, even the basic monetary policy, we've talked about that a lot, how just the monetary system is a vehicle for the destruction of the middle class, they getting the inflation and the loss of jobs and the difficulties with the system like that. At the same time, guess what? You end up with more trillionaires than ever before. And I can't help but frequently mention the fact that Mises said that what we're doing here is deliberately, in a way, the policies are deliberately destroying the middle class. So the question that should be asked when they start talking about programs like this is, who's benefiting from this? And sometimes it's very, very difficult. Some of the crazy stuff doing with the lockdowns, you think, well, that's going to hurt business. Look how many business people have been put out of business and bankrupted, and how many people have suffered the consequences of the lockdown, and the kids not getting educated, and people committing more suicide. This goes on, so somebody suffers. But I have to question, if you're going to take the cash away, who's likely to benefit from this? And it turns out that the people most dependent are the people at the lower end of the financial system, and they're the ones who depend on it. Millions of people don't have bank accounts, and they will immediately be wiped out in that sense. So that's one group that's going to suffer. At the same time, there are others, the people who want efficiencies and not messing around with dollar bills, and they have all kinds of excuses, and their technology may be helping protect them, and the wealthy can actually benefit from this. But there's another group that benefits, whether it's the lockdown and COVID, or eliminating cash, which would be very, very chaotic, especially if the economic continues to erode. The people who benefit by this, whose goal it is to have economic chaos and social chaos. And I strongly believe that. There are those who believe in social, cultural Marxism, that is the goal, to have it, because that elicits more support. People become, more determined. Well, the inflation problem is it, and what we need the government to print more money and run up more debt and send us more money, and that's really the source of the problem. And they always go back to the same thing again, and the people suffer, whether it's the inflation factor, the COVID struggle, or if you come along and say, well, we're going to solve this problem and we'll be able to collect more revenues so we can take care of the poor. Maybe we can clean up our inner cities. They're such a mess. We'll collect more money if we could just collect all the taxes on all these cash transfers. So, but there's a lot of excuses. But I think what I want to do is urge you not to forget about what I consider the big one, and that is they're not worried about chaos in the street or somebody suffering and somebody else benefiting from it. And that's part of the scheme that is in. There's a lot of stupidity there, that's true too, but there's a lot of scheming in there on power structure and how they want to remake the world and have a new world order, and that have the true new world order coming from the Marxist viewpoint means you got to get rid of the old one, and that's what they're trying to do, and they believe this stuff, and they don't. they don't have a conviction that truth can be determined, and that people suffering from the transition, they don't count. So that is what we face. So this is an effort, like I said, and Chris mentioned it as well, that this is not coming the next day or two. But the thoughts are there. They've been around a long time, and wage and price controls have been around a long time, and they come and go in this country. So yes, it is something to be concerned about, and the only way I believe we can combat that is an understanding of what the system is doing, how it works, and what is the proper role of government in a system that we want to be free and more prosperous, and that is, of course, for me, the voluntary society. On all events, social and economics, and religious and sexual, everything has to be a voluntary action between two people. You know, they have ways to implement this without having it total and complete with one sweep of the hand. They can do something incrementally, and one thing I think they could do, and they're capable of doing it, is penalize the people who are using cash. Not say you can't do it. It's sort of like the government right now says, we don't have any mandates. We just tell the businessman, if you don't do it, we're going to punish you, and we're going to take away your benefits, and that sort of thing. So yes, indirectly they can have the control because they are powerful. But what the banks could do is anybody that wants to deal in cash, and the small business people want to, the banks might not ever start off with saying no cash, it's been a ban, just forget about it. They might say, well, you'll have to pay a tax on it. You'll have to pay us to take your money. You're putting in $100, you have to pay us a couple dollars to put it in the bank, and of course that eventually would have to be passed on to the consumer, so there would be, you know, a tax on the use of cash.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information, and it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
What to do in such a situation? Inform yourself and keep your financial education strong. We from the Compact Group offer our loyal subscribers a free educational portal with first-hand monetary, financial, and economic knowledge. Enter our invite-only Insider Club by clicking the link below. You will get access to first-class information far earlier than the rest. We have prepared a special deal for all our members where you can access a giant pool of Robert Kiyosaki's financial wisdom for just $1. To find out more, simply click the link below and join our Insider Club absolutely free. But there is more you can and should do. Build up several streams of income. More and more people realize that they have to take their future in their own hands, but they don't know how and where to start. We from Compact offer our Insider Club members unique opportunities. Strengthen your financial muscle and get the edge. Click the link below. Become part of our free Insider Club. No financial obligations. But there's one important thing you have to know. You have to become active. So do it now. Become active and see you on the other side.